am thinking of getting a new car, should I buy it or not buy it? So should I buy or should I hire the car? Now, if I just say buying doesn't necessarily mean just taking the cash out of your company and going to the garage with the money and physically buying it. You can do that, or you can hire purchase the car so that you own it at the end of the period, or you could get a bank loan out and you could buy the car that way. It doesn't necessarily mean just taking all the cash out of the business, as one of my clients thought he had to do. So, a couple of years ago when clients used to ask me that question, I would say, depends really. It depends on whether you like to buy things or whether you don't mind not buying things and not owning something at the end of 3 years. My answer now is completely different. My answer is still, it depends, but what it depends on is two things. It depends on the list price of that car, and it depends on the CO2 emission of that car, because it's in 3 different bands depending on the emission of the car. The government wants you all to buy cars that are under 110 grams worth of emission, nice, green, environmentally friendly cars. And for great big corporations out there, they have got a policy where they will only buy under 110 grams worth cars. Now, there are actually 471 of those cars in the market. They're not just your tiny little Citroen C1s and your little Peugeots and things. There are some fairly big, substantial cars as well that you might actually want to drive around in. You know, your typical reps cars, your typical saloons and things. So what I've done for you, I've got the 3 varieties of cars, if you like. We've got our under 110 gram car, 110 gram to 160 gram car, because there are different tax reasons, treatments for that, and we've got over 160 gram cars. Now, obviously, this car here is a Honda Civic Hybrid. Obviously. You can tell from the way that I have drawn that, that is a Honda Civic. Now, all of these cars, they all cost in the region of £25,000. So you're going to be driving around in a pretty similar standard of car when you are driving around. Now, the emission of a Honda Civic Hybrid is 109. So it is under the 110 grams. Now, the way that the government incentivise you to buy that car is they give you a 100% allowance against your profits when you buy that car. So our car has cost £25,000, so our allowance against our profits for the year for buying this lovely Civic here is £25,000. Now, we pay corporation tax in this country at the moment of 20%. Therefore, our tax bill has just gone down by £5,000 if we buy the car. So buy it, HP, or get a bank loan. Now, we could, of course, hire the car. There's no reason why not. You know, we can go to any company, we can hire the car. The hire cost of a car like that is going to be about £400 a month. Okay? So the cost of that, now 400 times 12 is £4,800, isn't it? But I've got £5,280 there, because there's a strange little rule when you hire a car which says you can only claim back 50% of the VAT. So therefore it costs the company £440 a month that can be charged against your profit. So it's £5,280. So if I hired the car at 20%, my tax would go down by £1,056. So to my client who's going to go and buy a Honda Civic, would I say to buy or would I say to hire? I would say, I think you should go and buy that car. Okay? Now, there's obviously 2 sides to this. There's how much tax the company is going to save, but obviously as an employee of a company, as a director of a company, you're going to have a benefit in kind on that car. The company providing you with a £25,000 car. And the benefit in kind rates go from 10% to 35% depending on the emission. For an emission under 120 grams, your rate is 10%. So the way that it works is list price of the car times by the percentage gives you a benefit in kind, times it by your rate of tax. I'm going to assume these are all 20% taxpayers. That car is going to cost you each month in tax £42 a month. Now, I don't think that's bad. For driving around in a £25,000 car is going to cost you £42 a month in your pay packet. I think that's okay. Do we choose to put all the fuel in for that car? Again, that's a separate decision. they're all classed at 18,800. Every single car that you go out and buy, the government will tax you on the percentage times 18,800. That rate is a flat rate and it changes each year. If you decided that the company was going to pay for all the fuel on that car, you would pay tax of £31 a month on top of that, okay? So that's £73 a month for all your car to be paid, all your repairs, all your servicing, everything like that, or your road tax, your insurance, and all your fuel to be paid as well. I don't think that's a bad deal at all. So the next car that we come to is obviously a Peugeot 508 2-litre automatic. Obviously, okay? And this is our amber car. Okay, now the emission of a Peugeot 508 2-litre automatic, I spent many hours on the internet trying to get all these the other day. The emission is 149. So our second rate is between 110 and 160. This is 149. The government say that this year they will allow you a 20% allowance against your tax. So your allowance on this car is just £5,000 for this year, and that's on a reducing scale. It goes down, it's 20% of the reducing balance, the next year will be 20% of £20,000. It does go down. So this year we're going to save tax of £1,000. Next year 800, it will go down. Or we could hire it, and again it will cost us the same amount of money because it's the same value of car, and that will reduce our tax bill by £1,056. Now bearing in mind that this, obviously there's not a lot of difference here, but this will go down each year, then I would say that we're going to go and hire this car. We're not going to buy it. So that one we want to hire. Okay. At that CO2 emission of 149, our benefit in kind rate 19%. Using the same calculation as before, that's going to cost us £79 a month. So obviously nearly double for driving the same value car. Our petrol is going to cost us £60 a month. So, but again, £79 a month isn't a huge amount to pay for driving around in that sort of car. You may choose to go for that. There's a lot of companies that I deal with that say, we just don't want to drive one of those green cars. But each year the manufacturers are bringing their emissions lower and lower and lower because obviously they're perfectly well aware of these rules and where everything's going. So particularly when we look at our last car, which is obviously... So does anybody know what it is?
An Audi.
It is an Audi 2-litre Quattro. This is an Audi. That is 174 grams. I actually had great difficulty finding a car worth about £25,000 that was over 160 grams of emission. What I found was last year there were 164, 165. This year they're 159. So the manufacturers are bringing it down all the time. Obviously, once you get into your big cars, your £35,000, £40,000, you've got no problem finding them. But at this sort of level, it was quite difficult to find one, actually. When you go over 160 grams, you're only given a 10% allowance. That's £2,500 allowance, which means our tax bill is going to go down by £500. The tax reduction, however, isn't 1,056 anymore. Because again, there's a strange little rule that says we're going to reduce that by 15% if it's over 160. So they're really discouraging you to buy anything over 160 grams. So your tax relief is actually only going to be £898. Still better, you still want to hire it, but you know, the government are doing what they can to really say to you, we really don't want to buy you to buy anything that's over 160 grams. Benefit in kind on that, 24%. So obviously it's going up with the emissions. That's going to cost us £100 a month or £75 a month if we put the fuel in as well. So now we're up to £175 a month. So, you know, again, somebody might say, I want an Audi. I do have clients who say, I don't care what it costs, so that's the car I want. And that's fine. You may think £175 a month out your pay packet is okay to pay for that sort of car. But could have the same sort of car and only pay £73 a month. So when a client rings me and says, I'm thinking of buying a car, should I buy it or should I hire it? It really isn't a straightforward answer. It's a case of what's the emission and what is the actual list price of the car. So I'll just show you as well what happens when, what I have is a lot of these clients, generally male clients, who say, I don't care about any of this. What I want is what I want, and I want this sort of car, okay, which is a big car. Okay, see, now this is obviously, Deb, and this is obviously a BMW X6 Drive 35i, okay? So yeah, Sean obviously wants a BMW, okay? Now, the on-the-road price of this is, Sean?
Oh, it's going to be a lot of money.
£47,130, okay? The benefit in kind on that car, the rate is 35%, which is the highest level that you can get to. If I was a 20% taxpayer, I would pay £275 a month to have that car sitting on my drive. The chances are, however, that if I'm buying a £47,000 car, that I'm going to be a higher rate taxpayer. So that is actually going to cost me £550 each month. That's the tax in your pay packet coming out each month, £550. The fuel is going to cost you another £220 a month. So that's £770 a month to have this car sitting on your drive. Plus the cost of, the company's buying it. So, yeah, so these are the decisions that you have to look at when you are buying a car.